And with that, I hand you over to Farah to direct the conversation.
Thank you so much, Terrence. Good morning, everybody. How are you feeling today? Who here is exceptionally excited about this topic? All right, that's interesting. If we have time, I would love to hear from you, so don't be shy to raise your hands for Q&A. We have a very big topic today, right? So AI for good in ASEAN, that's very broad and very all-encompassing. We only have 40 minutes, which we will not be able to use to cover everything that sits within this topic. But with me today, I've got very, very experienced and incredible people who have been doing a lot of good work at the cross-section and intersection of technology with social impact. So I'm going to let Arifah start to introduce herself a little bit, and then we move on to André.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arifah. I'm the Institute Director of TechForGood Institute. We are a research think tank looking at technology policy, digital economy, and the intersection between economy, people, and businesses. Our focus are actually bringing the perspectives of Southeast Asia into the larger crowd. Yeah.
Thanks, Arifah. André?
Thanks, Farah. Hi, my name is André, and I am the community lead here at Build with AI. So I've been working in tech for the last 15 years already, building a whole bunch of different AI products. And our mission here at Build with AI is simple. So it's a non-commercial organization. And what we do is that we inspire and enable anyone to build out their idea into a working product with AI. We host these meetups that we have every single month. Do come along and just be inspired.
Thank you, André. And I'm here today as your moderator because I've spent about a decade in a tech VC firm in America, and after that I dove right into impact, moving into conservation-focused work. And so I'll start with that as an example from our real-life experiences in the past, because we're looking at storytelling, right, and stories from ASEAN. From my work in WWF, for example, we used to use AI technology to predict potential forest loss in Borneo. And we did this from a global team of global scientists where we looked at pathways people have made months early ahead, right? So that we could actually work with local partners and government institutions to prevent deforestation from happening across the region. So that's one real life example that I have. And I'm really curious to know about examples that you both can bring to the table today.
I think first of all, we need to acknowledge that Southeast Asia region is a very unique and diverse region, right? And that the region itself has over 100 ethnic groups with over 1,000 languages being spoken on a daily basis. Yet the existing generative AI technology that's available to people now are based on English language, right? Maybe Vietnamese and Indonesian language, maybe just about 1%, and everything else is below 1%, right? So it is actually very interesting to know that there are new local language, large language models which are coming up. Initiatives like the Merah Lion by Singapore, the ones actually being developed by Malaysian companies like Zetrix that is coming, the one with this Nur AI, the one that was also launched yesterday by YTL company, Mesolytica. So you are seeing all these new products that are coming out to the market, more for applications or usage by the locals, but also ensuring that the AI bias won't happen, right? And then the local contexts are taken into consideration when developing these new products.
Thanks for sharing that. Do you have thoughts on that, André?
Yeah, so I do agree at this point here whereby the current AI is very much English focused. There needs to be a shift towards multiple different languages, and I see a lot of countries currently doing that to really just democratize access of AI to a lot more people, right? Of course, where I come in here is more about the whole democratization of different tools that we have. Working with AI right now would be as fundamental as reading, writing, or even doing math. Before this, people were talking about how coding was the brand new thing everyone would need to code, but now the latest coding language is English. but that's only for the English speakers. Now, what about those who are, say, in rural Borneo? What about those in, say, Indochina? They may not have access to these AI tools just yet because their English may not be super proficient. And of course, if we were to bring that impact here again, one of the main things that really has to be done would be to expand that reach, right? It's not just about tools, but it's also about making sure that people are able to use these tools in order to really, really create what they have in mind.
That's a really good point, and I'm curious to dive into that a little bit more before we go into the next topic. How have you seen people adapt in order to figure out how their community could be using AI technology, right, in order for it to be localized and accessible for those who usually don't have a seat at the table? Have you seen any examples?
Right. In terms of how I see people adapt, of course, different tools like Claude or even OpenAI, they have these magical prompt makers and others right now, right? How I see it here is that we see these technology companies, in fact, moving a lot faster than how humans are able to adapt. In fact, you don't need to type in, say, something like super complicated or even super complex to get what you want. The AI kind of just gets it, right? And I feel that that is, in fact, a step in the right direction. Why? Because people or the general public as a whole would be slower than how a lot of these large technology companies grow, right? So large technology companies do have this responsibility to make these products accessible. I mean, you go to a website, let's say if your eyesight is not that great, you go over the website, you may not be able to read it. Is it your responsibility to get glasses or get operations just to read the content on the website there, or is it the responsibility of, say, the website developer to develop accessibility access so that people with eyesight issue are able to access your website?
That's really cool. I want to move back to Arifah, right? So working in the sector that you are in, you collaborate a lot with different partners, and echoing what André has just mentioned about the potential solutions that you see and how people can work, do you have any thoughts you want to add to that?
Okay, so when you talk about technological innovation, it's usually the innovation would be most useful and have a longer shelf life when it's actually addressing larger societal problems, right? Or larger challenges. So when you clearly define the social problems, when you clearly define your problem statement, you should be able to clearly define who should be involved in coming up with new digital solutions. Involvement of the government's ministries or agencies, or ensuring that you are within regulation, and if it's not within regulation, get yourself to be part of a sandbox to test it out. So those are all the processes and steps that you need to take to ensure that technology is addressing problems. Maybe just a quick highlight of examples. In Indonesia, for example, the ratio between a doctor to patient for every 1,000 patient is only 0.72 doctor, right? It's not even one, right? So that is a real societal issue that could be addressed. So with this huge gap, private sector foundation collaborated with a VC to call upon the local technology solution providers to come up with solutions to address this issue. So that is examples of what is happening. And I think in Malaysia is also the same. We have so many accelerator programs, like the Alpha Summit, and so many things, and so many builders are here. So I think that's also a main thing that we need to encourage. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a really great example. To add on to that, I'm curious from your organization's perspective, right? How does your institute really ensure that your For Good initiatives remain independent and they actually genuinely serve communities while you're working with all these corporate partners and accelerators and VCs?
Okay, so TechForGood Institute, we are a non-profit organization, and as a research think tank, we are a neutral platform where the government, the private sector, civil society organizations can actually debate and discuss to create new concepts, validate new concepts, ensuring that as many important stakeholders are involved in the development of new things, right? Be it in technology, be it in digital economy, policy making, for example. So those are how we want to remain relevant and provide that kind of value to the whole ecosystem. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So now I'm going to move on to André because she mentioned being a neutral platform and that being important for us to figure out collaborations across different partners, right? Would you say Build with AI is also a neutral platform? And like, how would you position yourself where grassroots developer communities can also basically collaborate?
Right. I wouldn't say that we are a 100% neutral platform. I mean, we are neutral in terms of the tools that we use, right? But of course, in terms of our biases, it's very much about democratizing these tools or democratizing this knowledge so that people are able to achieve a higher level of financial or economic advancements over there, right? So it's AI for good, but it's more about AI for economic good, all right? Getting more people involved in AI, getting more people building with AI, pushing out their products into the market, being able to lift either their own or their family financial situation upwards. Now, I want to talk about how these three different stakeholders would work together in this age of AI, right? So first one is that we've got the grassroots builders. The second group here is that we've got governments, and the third one here is that we've got the corporates. Now, the grassroots builders, which is where I operated, what we are here is that we know problems that are going on the ground. We are closest to the issue. If you expect the government or corporate to know what's really going on down there, they may not exactly know how, right? So if you want to talk about, hey, do I understand this deep enough? It's usually the grassroots who face that kind of problem. And one of the very principles of building is that you solve your own problem first, right? You build something. That's one. So the grassroots know the problem, but they are not able to scale. They don't have the capacity to scale. Government has the capacity to scale, but for government to come in, they would usually need proof. Hey, does this work? If I do invest 100,000, 500,000 would you be able to actually push something through, right? And then, of course, this is where the corporates come in. The corporates here have the infrastructure that the grassroots would need in order to scale. But of course, for corporates, what they really need here, again, is that they need trust. And what better trust to come in than the government itself? So, in fact, how I see is that these three stakeholders would have to work together, right? The grassroots builders, the government, and corporates basically working in that triangle to basically push any sort of AI product forward. And of course, with more AI products out there, with higher scale, overall, we are able to lift up the economic prosperity of not just Malaysia, but the entire ASEAN as well.
Very interesting that you touched on working with government and policy at the same time. So we just had a conversation before this, Arifah, and I want you to have the opportunity to share your thoughts on how you think AI can be governed in terms of our policies and how will that help making AI more accessible to everybody here today.
Okay, AI governance is something new, right? In fact, at the ASEAN level, this year we are setting up the ASEAN safety network, to ensure that the ASEAN development in ASEAN AI development is safe for the region. I think when you talk about governing and regulation, those are scary words for people like André. Because it tends to the word govern tends to, dampen down innovation, right? So what we always advocate for is regulations which are fit for purpose, number one. Number two, for it to be principles-based as opposed to prescriptive, prescriptive-based. I think this is the balance that we need to find and also advise into the policy to the policymakers to make sure that whichever guidelines that we want to produce, whichever potentially law in the future that we might have, some countries in ASEAN actually are pushing towards a law for AI. So that's also actually quite concerning. But how can these law and regulation enable innovation as opposed to stop it altogether? So that is the current challenge now.
Interesting. I see you smiling.
Do you want to add something?
Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, so my perspective on AI laws and AI guidelines is that we do need laws, we do need regulations. Otherwise, people who are far more technologically advanced, they will run rogue. And it has happened before. And what happens, and not just about AI, right, but even say any form of technology, if a certain group of people have this magical feature, this magical technology that will bring them far, far ahead, what happens to the other 90% of people who don't have access to that sort of technology yet, right? So in other words, how I see guidelines or regulation is that there are also an equity factor in that, sure, we've got market leaders who are moving up front, but because of the laws, they also need to make sure that these other 90% or these other 80% of people who may not be moving as fast as them would be pulled along as well, right? So there's that follow-on factor.
Very fascinating. I wanted to continue this conversation with Miss Stella because she would have incredible insights from a policy standpoint. But when she comes back, we're going to ask her a few of those questions. Okay, so now I'm curious to know, right? Since we've already spoken about the status quo, let's look into the future. Imagine 3 to 5 years in advance. Where do you see emerging opportunities lie for ASEAN as a region and as a whole? For André, like as you're building this community, I'm sure you're seeing different trends from different members that you have across the region, seeing what is it that they're most keen on building. And for you, Arifah, since you look at it from a more research-based perspective, what are the most pressing problems that you have seen that you think should be addressed? So which either of you can start first.
Now, one of the biggest opportunities or trends that we are seeing right now is that because it's getting cheaper and cheaper to build your own thing, rather than buy it off the shelf, that's where most people would go into, especially those that are able to build, right? Before this, building an app may cost you 50,000, 100,000 ringgit. But now building an app could be as cheap as 100 ringgit or less, or in most cases, even free. So let's say if you're using a certain product right now and you are paying, say, 100 ringgit a month for it, and you believe that, hey, this product here is not customized to me, it's not personalized, hey, I want to build up my own product. And the best part about building up your own product is that you get to customize it to your exact needs, how you really want it to look like. And what this means is that now, because it's getting so easy to build, you are also able to build it or even license or sell it to people who may not have that time or have that energy to, say, build their own custom solution or even their own custom programs and all this, right? And of course, with more builders coming in, we have a much more larger diversity of ideas coming into this as well. Especially one of the ones that I'm most excited about is having really any other language other than English coming in here to basically just create stuff that we may not have seen in the market here right now because it's not commercially viable.
From the perspective of the Institute, the areas that actually a bit more concerning for us when you look at the trends is actually along the line of talent development. Also, maybe specifically how AI is impacting work and how AI is impacting workforce, right? Whether is a country producing enough AI talent with proper technical skills, so that's one. And number two, whether we are producing enough talent who have the competencies to do the creative thinking, to do the solutioning, because these are the skills which are not hard skills, right? Yeah, so I think that is something that we should watch. And at the Institute, we do have a research program specifically on new models of work. Yeah.
Amazing. I think these soft skills are now actually hard skills for the future. So all of us with children, this is really what we need to invest in, right? And language for accessibility is definitely very important. So now we finally have a special guest joining us, our beloved Miss Stella Christie, the Deputy Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology of Indonesia. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you, Ms. Stella, for joining us all the way from Indonesia. So since we have had the first 20 minutes hogged by ourselves, I would like to give this opportunity for you to introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry, I'm a little late because directly from the airport. Already left like very early from Jakarta today. So I'm Stella Christie, the Vice Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology. I'm actually a scientist, so my president literally plucked me out from my science and laboratory in October 2024 last year. I was a tenured faculty before at Swarthmore College in the United States. I graduated from Harvard and Northwestern. I spent a long time in the United States. I'm a cognitive scientist. And after many years in the United States, I was actually recruited by Tsinghua University in China. So at that time that became the vice minister, I was and still am a professor at Tsinghua University. I work on the understanding of intelligence. So my own research is to understand what is the origins of intelligence. And this covers human intelligence. And intelligence really, how do we know how to speak? We just heard about language. Where does language come from? How do we get all the kinds of knowledge? How do we memorize? How do we remember? So that's the intelligence that I study. And in order to study that, I study very, very young infants and babies and compare them with artificial intelligence and with non-human animals. So at Tsinghua University, my laboratory is the largest cognitive developmental laboratory in China, one of the largest in Asia. But now, of course, as the Vice Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, I deal with all the things that to do with science and technology and higher education. So really glad to be here. And I had a little bit of points that maybe we can spark the discussion. Should we get along and start with that, or?
Yeah, I think we should continue a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
you were talking about how your experience has actually enabled the adoption of technology in education. So from your perspective, what would you say are the most important enablers, right? Whether it's skills or infrastructure that would basically help countries in the region in ASEAN to develop without harm.
So this is a perfect segue. So I think in one way we can, maybe if you don't mind, actually the presentation that a short presentation that I prepared directly answers this. So I'm just gonna go ahead and allow me to stand a little bit. It's just, we can talk about it. So I'm gonna, things that are obvious for all of us. And things that are obvious for all of us is that, of course, we in the ASEAN region is really kind of the booming child in terms of artificial intelligence. The data that I got since 2024, we already have 30 billions of US dollars investment in the ASEAN region. Malaysia is, of course, very much leading in that. So that's really amazing. And so there's just in terms of data centers, we are building $30 billion. And in Indonesia, it's a very interesting thing if you think like where are the huge interest of data center, huge interest of AI, you would guess correctly Jakarta, but you may not think that Riau Island and East Kalimantan are actually really interested in AI. So this, I think, is true in other ASEAN regions. So it's not only in the metropolitan city, but what is really exciting about the ASEAN region, given our young population, there are all these huge interests about AI, also in the provinces, also in other areas. So this is a very important fact about ASEAN and AI. But we have challenges. This is just one challenge. The latest data that I got from a very important cybersecurity company is that ASEAN is actually the new target for cyber attack. So it is actually quite concentrated, and it just became recently, ASEAN is the new target of the cyber attack. This is, of course, two sides of the same coin, given that we are so interested in AI, we use it a lot, and so we also get a lot of attacks. So the theme that I'm trying to spark the discussion today is that we have inequality in terms of AI. We are very excited about it, we spend a lot of money on it, but if we look at the data, there is inequality between the other countries and us in the region, between urban and rural region, and between the technology producers and the technology consumers. We're trying to be producers as well, but at this time, we're still, a lot of us are consumers in ASEAN region. So this inequality is real, and how should we analyze and how should we think about this inequality? So that's my topic to answer the question, what's the most important? So to analyze this inequality, I think we should think about these three things in the schema. The first one is knowledge, because if you don't have the knowledge, if you don't produce the knowledge, you cannot attract investment. And then after that, after investment, only then you can build the infrastructures. If you build the infrastructure first without the knowledge, that infrastructure is going to go to waste. But if you already have the knowledge, further infrastructure is going to actually give more knowledge. So very quickly, in terms of the inequality itself in these three dimensions, knowledge, investment, and infrastructure. Knowledge-wise, more than 90% of all the papers on AI are actually published only by China and the US. So huge inequality in terms of knowledge, okay? And if you look at, in terms of investment, huge inequality in investment. These are investments in China and in the US, and in India, Germany, and Japan. I didn't have even the data from this, but ASEAN are so much smaller compared to the investment that is put in the China and the US. So we have to acknowledge this. But and then if we look at the infrastructures, we are actually doing quite good. So if we look at China, that's still by region, China, the United States, still very much leading. But Asia, without China, and a lot of that has contributed by us, by ASEAN, is actually quite good in terms of the infrastructure. But this is exactly the key question, right? Are we really building the infrastructures? But if we don't have the knowledge and then that could attract investment in the right way, are those infrastructures going to be used in a very, in a really well known? So it's exactly your question, and I try to put perspective about what should be our strategy given the inequality. The inequality is definitely there, and we're trying to gap this inequality, but I think we need strategy to gap this inequality. In terms of knowledge, as the questions about skills, I think that was already discussed. I think that knowledge, yes, we should be doing education and all those is very important, but I think if we just talk very honestly, it's not going to be able to actually catch up with the gap of 90% of the knowledge production in AI is already done by the US and China. That knowledge gap is going to be there. So if we want to catch up as ASEAN, we need to strategize, and our strategy should be specialized knowledge, which is that we need to pick up some of those like really special niche area in our own countries, and really what are the AI in each of those areas that are really important for our own countries. And I'm going to give an example from Indonesia later on. So we have to develop expertise in few niche area, and the government really needs to identify this niche. And public-private sector partnership is really important to develop these niche areas. And in terms of investment, the investment gap, this is where we need to work together, because we really need to pool resources. We need to make coalition, and we need to make consortia. And why? Because yes, it's wonderful that we all like have the resources to build some of these to build infrastructures, but if we don't pool them, it's going to be a bit of a waste, and we cannot compete with the giants. So in order for us to compete with the giants, I think ASEAN really need to pool our resources, and this can really be done. The resources we can pull within our own countries, between government and private sectors, but also among us. So we can have division of labor and make like a consortia later on. And we also, if it's very interesting if we go to the pooled investment, China and the US in this graph, as you can see, they actually make also select pooled investment. As you can see in China, this bar of the orange, of the maroon color is particularly about the electric vehicle, mobility and autonomous vehicles. So they also make very select investment. So this goes to do with the knowledge part as well, that you actually should specialize in particular knowledge. And for the infrastructures, this one actually, while investments, I think we should be pooling together, and an easiest way to think about the investments is this. I'll give the analogy from an already existing pooled investments around the world. Let's take telescopes. the telescopes that we have on this earth, the best ones are actually pooled investments. The best ones are actually in Chile, and countries from around the world actually spend money in order to build that investments together, and then later on borrow time to use the telescopes. Otherwise, no country can actually be building such a great telescope. So that's what I mean by the pooled investment. But for the infrastructures, I actually think the strategy that we are already doing right now is great, which is that every country has a wealth of data. And this day and age of AI, you know that the data is the most expensive one, not the algorithm. The algorithm is going to be already cheap, or even later is going to be free. So it's not the algorithm that is, and the algorithm is going to be, you can do a lot of them from open sources, and they're going to get better and better and cheaper and cheaper. But the data, that's what's going to be expensive. The data, and that's what we have to guard. Each and every one of us in ASEAN, we need to think about what is the data that can be gathered in our country, and to educate the public in terms of education, the importance of data, the importance of accuracy in terms of the data, and gathering this data for our own good. So we have to think about how to collect the data well, how to keep the data in home-based infrastructures, how to educate people to understand the importance of keeping data. Malaysia is doing great on this. We're very envious of Malaysia, of building a lot of home-based infrastructures of this. We have a lot to learn from Malaysia as well. But I think this is a very important strategy for us. So I just want to give like very concrete example of what kind of so organize computing centers within shareable time and encourage private entities to store and process the data at home. That's actually very important, meaning at your home country. Indonesia is still trying to really catch up with this, so to actually be able to store our data at home and discourage and limit outflow of data. So I'm just going to give like very specific example from Indonesia about this strategy: specialized knowledge, investment, pooled investment, and then infrastructure, so building infrastructure. These, if we talk about investment, Indonesia right now really focusing on these 28 natural resources. These are the natural resources that we are very rich of, but we do not yet have the technology in order to make the market to reap a higher market price for each of them. For all of them. So Indonesia is very rich in all the very important minerals. We are the number 2 reserves on nickel. I think many of you know that. So to build all those chips, actually that needs to come from Indonesia. But building the chips, the Malaysians are definitely way better than us. At this moment, we're trying to learn from the Malaysians as well. Rare earth minerals. But I want to actually show you, and also in terms of crude oil and natural gas, agriculture, maritime fisheries, and forest. So these are the things that we are really rich, but we still haven't developed the technology yet. So I'm going to give you example of what my ministry and under my leadership is actually doing right now, because I said specialized knowledge. So there's one right now we're actually doing seaweed. And all of you is like, what does seaweed have to do with AI? It has all to do with AI. Seaweed is a huge market. Right now, the seaweed market is about $12 billion US. Indonesia is the number 1 tropical seaweed producers in the world. And the prediction is going to reach around 200 billion in terms of converting the seaweed into sustainable aviation fuel. So for fuel, seaweed is the future of fuel. But right now, the technology is actually available for converting seaweed to fuel. What's not yet available is to make sure that we have a constant supply of seaweed. So it's actually the farming technology. In order to do that, you really need AI. Because we are now farming in the sea and not on the land, and you need to map like all the parameters in the sea where we can actually farm the seaweed and all kinds of the data that we have to do. So that's why the AI is actually very important. And these are just some numbers. I'm not going to go through the numbers, but just to show you, we have done all the calculations. Very exciting, and it's very strategized in terms of seaweed. And but we have to do the research, and we need like the AI to make use of this basic seaweed research to actually happen. We do pooled our investments, so we are working with a university in Indonesia, also with UC Berkeley, with Beijing Genomics Institute in China, between government and also with private Indonesian Employers Association, a very strong, one of the strongest private employers, private businesses association that actually will make a seaweed consortium with the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology. So that's one example that we're doing. And we're very excited because my President Prabowo, really makes the science and technology to be the forefront of it. Just a couple of days ago, on the 7th, he actually opened a national conventions of science and technology and industry. So that's what's really key, science, technology, and industry. So I guess the short answer to this, I think we do have to work on the knowledge and make that a specialized knowledge. So we have to think each of our countries, how do we make that specialized knowledge in terms of AI? And then from that, we can do pooled investment, and we have to actually think about how government can identify that pool investment and make an ecosystem that actually works for the pooled investment, so that we can actually build infrastructures together. And in the infrastructures, we do have to again focus on our home country. So it's a mix of what we can do together, what we should do, and what we should also identify our strong areas in each of our countries. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Miss Stella. You made up for all the time you weren't here for. Excellent. I see that we only have about 5 minutes left, so I'm actually going to start wrapping up so that if we do have extra time, maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions. So I'm going to start with Arifah, and then we move on to André and then Ms. Stella on your main takeaway for the audience today after that incredible presentation.
Okay. Main takeaway that I want the audience to go home with. Number 1, collaboration actually involves people. So AI begins with people. Like, for example, what Vice Minister mentioned, the data. The data needs to be trained. The training is done by humans, right? Before it becomes an actual technology. So that's one. Number 2, most importantly, we need to make sure that AI development is safe. We need to do some form of soft regulation. Let's not make it prescriptive, but make it principle-based. So principle-based, fit-for-purpose regulation, I think would work best for our region.
So a key takeaway for this is that if you're not currently building anything right now, go forth and just build, right? Find out what you're extremely good at, because that is your specialized knowledge that nobody else has, right? And build something on top of that. Yesterday, we've got AMD announcing 100,000 free GPU hours. So if you are building something specialized that needs deep research going in there, do check them out and do utilize all these things that are coming in. And finally, of course, when it comes time to scale, do get in touch with the government or do connect with government agencies to basically bring your product to the world.
My main takeaway is that AI is our tool. So we need to think about how do we want to use this tool that is best for our country, that is best for our development. And it's not necessarily that we need to work on the surface of AI. AI needs to work on the surface of us. So we have to think very carefully about how we want to make use of the AI, and just remember that AI is our tool and not the other way around. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. What I gather from that is, in ASEAN, we're not looking to build AI that works anymore. We're looking to build AI that works for us, that works for all of us together, right? So that's my main takeaway from today. We have 2 minutes left on the clock. I purposely wanted to see if we could have a question from the audience. Don't all rush at once, that's okay. That's why I asked in the beginning who's really interested about this topic, because I wanted to see if there are people who might have questions. Yeah, one in the front.
Hi, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the panel, and all of you gave really good perspective on how you can utilize AI for good and also for development. But I feel like there was kind of like a lack of like focus on the kind of implications, and especially socially, on how what AI can actually bring to our society. And I wonder is that, you know, we've been talking about regulations, but for example, like Ms. Arifah mentioned a little bit of the AI safety network, and I was wondering what is the actual concrete plans into regulating the social implications for AI. For example, we have problems of deepfake and also like hallucination and like AI psychosis and something like that. So I was wondering, like, how do we manage to, because expanding AI so fast at this rate also can have its social implications. So how do we balance that rate of progress and as well as making sure that it's safe and good for people? Yeah.
Really good question.
Thank you so much for your question. Okay, so technology, as we know it, is actually sector agnostic, right? Maybe I can give example initiatives in Malaysia. If specifically talking about deepfake or use of AI in scams, right? That regulation actually is under the purview of one ministry. However, when it comes to adoption of digital, is a different ministry. So there lies in the complexity of governing and enforcement. But the good thing is that at a higher level, our government are quite well coordinated when it comes to looking after anything implicating digital economy. So there is the Fourth IR National Council platform that they actually convene every month. So those are the kind of things that is being done at the federal level. And then, of course, as we know it, the relevant government agencies are also making it more easy for you to report things as such. Yeah, so we are still a long way to go. And the ASEAN AI Safety Network will only be fully, I mean, it has been endorsed by the digital ministers in principle, but I think it's going to be launched, if not later part of this year, it will be early next year. So that's when you can see how it can benefit the government, the people, and the businesses, and then making sure that people are safe in this space.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I recognize that there's a lot of environmental and social impact actually with the development of AI, and we don't have enough time to discuss all of that today, but this discourse is actually what makes it work for all of us. We need to continue speaking up and need to continue being discerning about what the implications are. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time for showing up here today, and the panelists as well. Thank you, Ms. Stella, Mr. André, and Ms. Arifah. Appreciate all of you. Enjoy the rest of the summit and have a wonderful day.